Welcome to ChiroSphere, where we talk about all things chiropractic and, well, some things not so chiropractic. I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth, your host for ChiroSphere and CEO of Chiro Health USA, the network that works for chiropractic. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Kevin Christie. In 2009, Dr. Christie was appointed by Governor Charlie Crist to the Board of Athletic Trainers as the chiropractic advisor. This appointment included working with and advising the Board of Athletic Trainers on maintaining and improving the quality of care for certified athletic trainers in the state of Florida. Throughout his career, Dr. Christie has become certified in leading soft tissue techniques like ART, Graston technique, and kinesiotaping. He's treated over 300 NFL players along with Major League Baseball and NHL athletes. He's also the founder of Modern Chiropractic Marketing, and I'll tell you, it's a heck of a lot more than marketing. I just spent some time going through their website and getting up to speed, and impressive amount of information there to help the profession. And like I said, his focus has been on helping chiropractors in their business and the marketing aspect of it. So, Kevin, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and we all know his famous "What's your why?" And while we're certainly going to learn some about what you do, I really am interested in what is your why? What really drove you to go into this area, and then what you did to extend what you've learned to our profession.
Yeah, kind of like how the audience heard there just in that short bio is I've kind of lived two careers in the last 19 years of being a chiropractor. Graduated in 2005, and really the first half of it, I was knee deep in the clinical and got a lot of great opportunities working with pro athletes, and I was all about the clinical side of things. And then kind of this second half year since about 2015, I've been working, I still have my private practice, still treat patients a few days a week, but we've been really helping chiropractors grow their business ethically. And the why behind that is because of the struggles I had when I opened up my own practice. And it wasn't necessarily a revenue problem. We did good out of the gates and all that, but then as insurances got tricky, and then I bought an office building for my practice, and things got complicated. I knew I needed help on the business and marketing side of things. And so I dove knee deep into that. And my why has become to help, evidence-based chiropractors thrive in practice. And I think you can do that. Well, I should say, I know you can do that, providing great patient care and great clinical outcomes, but at the same time, have good revenue and good profits to where you can build a great team and frankly, a great life. And that's been my why over the last about 8 years.
I find that interesting, having been around this profession, as I was sharing before we started. My mom and dad are both chiropractors, so I've seen a lot of chiropractic evolve over the years. And certainly in the last 10 years, more the evidence-based type of practice based on outcomes certainly is good for the patient. But if we're honest with each other, the reality was back in what they call the Mercedes 80s, you just had to open the door and you could send in a claim form without even having a stamp on the envelope. You got a check back. Yeah. And so it was easier to kind of build and grow practice when that type of coverage and everything was available. Well, fast forward into evidence-based care, and let's face it, the recommendations that are being made are not the year-long recommendations, the 6 months long recommendations. It is typically episodic care. And so, it's pretty easy to see if you look at that old model, a little bit easier to be profitable. With a newer model, it's, wow, I got to have a lot more patients to see because I don't have the length of the treatment recommendations that might have been in place. And it really is a mind shift of, hey, I'm okay with people doing episodic care for a given condition. And I've known a lot of guys that consider themselves evidence-based, and they make that shift. It is a bit of a challenge. So what have you found has been the biggest challenge for doctors that have decided to go more in an evidence-based model? And what do they need to do different in their marketing or the running of their practice?
Yeah, it's a great question. The way I kind of frame it based on what you said was, back in the 80s, 90s, even probably early 2000, a much higher percentage of chiropractors could be what we would call very financially successful. It was a pretty high percentage. The odds were in your favor. Whether it's because you got $115 a visit from insurance. You had a $10 copay, no in-network deductibles. It was a lot easier. It was like shooting fish in a barrel in a lot of ways. And now with the way the insurance situation is, a lot of chiropractors are either struggling with being in network with insurance if they don't put proper systems around. I do know many evidence-based chiropractors doing phenomenal being in network. So I'm going to get that straight. But there's a lot that are struggling with figuring that out, or they're just deciding to go cash, and they think that's the holy grail and cash. And cash can be great. My practice happens to be out of network with insurances, but I built up quite a reputation over some years before I actually did that. And so a lot of these chiropractors are coming out, young DCs, and they're going cash, and they're hitting a marketplace that's not putting a high value on their service. And so they're struggling with that. But to directly answer your question, I think, you can still be an in-network provider. You can be in a state like I'm in Florida, and the reimbursement for insurance is really bad. I mean, we're talking like $45 caps because Blue Cross and I think Cigna are ash. Aetna doesn't pay much, and United Healthcare has never paid anything. And those are the big four in Florida. Mm-hmm. But I know chiropractors in Florida, Missouri, and some other states that just does not reimburse well, but they're doing great. And because they're putting good systems around being able to see a certain amount of patients, they are discharging them from active care, but then they're doing a good job of getting them into what I might call performance care. And we have a little bit of a saying in our clinic is we want to be the training room for their life, whether it's work, sport, or just, activities of daily living. We want to keep them healthy. And so we do believe in that kind of performance maintenance care for patients to come in and do that. And then on top of it, one of the things I think chiropractors that are doing this well is they have a very good strategic marketing approach to get reactivation. So they are staying top of mind to their entire patient base. So if they have 10 years of practice, they're sending out a weekly email. They're doing text message reactivation campaigns. They're sending direct mail to their patients. They're staying top of mind. So they're getting a lot of reactivations. They might get 8 new patients in a week, and they're getting 14 reactivations in a week. That starts to build a very robust practice. And so there's a lot of good things that you can do for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my practice, solo practice for a number of years, and then brought in a couple of associates. And my practice before I sold it was actually on the campus of New South Neurospine, where we had 14 MDs, all in spine care, neurosurgery, or the whole realm. And when you talk about the doctors that are staying in touch with their patients, I mean, basically it's drip marketing to create top of mind awareness. It was really interesting. The majority, I would say, for a number of years, a lot of our patients actually came from MD referrals, some from in the facility we were in, but mostly from outside the facility. And it's funny how that top of mind awareness works, because here's what I found out. Whenever I get a referral from a medical doctor, and I had a process, they'd always get an initial report. 2 weeks later, they get an update. 2 weeks later, an update. So I kept them informed. And you know what would happen when I got behind on sending my letters out? The referrals decreased. Yeah. And, when I would kick that back in and say, we've stopped doing something, and we increase that. So, it's interesting, but it works on the patient side. But it also works on the referral side if in fact you have that type of practice. And I know a lot of evidence-based doctors, they distinguish themselves by providing evidence-based care. And let's face it, we're a great resource for the medical community. And, they're used to getting reports and communication and wanting to know what's going on with them. So I think the takeaway there is stay in touch with your people.
Oh, 100%. And there's so many cool ways of doing it now.
Oh, no doubt. So let's back up for a minute to the sports aspect of your practice. 300 NFL players is a lot, a lot. And how did you get involved in that? I mean, certainly we know there are a number of chiropractors affiliated with the NFL teams, but when you did this, what was your entree into that world? Because I can imagine it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it was a unique situation. It was in the summer of 2007. I'm down in South Florida. At the time, I was down in the Fort Lauderdale area. And so, like a lot of people ask, like, oh, how do I get NFL players? Well, if you're in, Wyoming, you're probably not going to get NFL players. But I was in a hotbed being in South Florida, and I got connected to run a practice inside of a sports training facility in Davie, Florida at the time. And the trainer was Pete Bomarito, and he has a company called Bomarito Performance Systems. And he's worked with just thousands of NFL players on speed and agility. So I was his clinical director from 2007 to 2010. I went to the NFL Combine with him each time. And then I opened my own practice up in Boca Raton, Florida, and I got really lucky. And there was a trainer named Tony Villani coming from Atlanta down to Boca Raton area. And Pete knew Tony, connected me with Tony. So then I was Tony's clinical director from 2010 all the way to 2020. And I went to the Combine with him as well. So I went to 12 straight NFL Combines. And I worked with a lot of the players coming from college, training for 8 weeks for the NFL Combine. And then we would go to there, and then a lot of them would train down here in South Florida in the off season. So I was more of kind of working with guys in the off season, not during the season, like a team chiropractor would.
Interesting. I've talked to some other docs that have been involved with the NFL, and I'm always curious about how you were received by the other members of the healthcare team. I know at one point in our state, we really had a conflict with athletic trainers because they perceived us as competition rather than complementary. Same thing with PT. What was your experience in getting the buy-in or acceptance, whatever term you want to use? I know there are preconceived ideas out there, as you do. How did you address some of those, and what were some of the main concerns that they had that you were able to alleviate?
Yeah, what I experienced, and then I've interviewed some people on my podcast about their experiences, and anybody that's done this and done it well will say is that you have to know your role as the chiropractor and what they want you for, right? You have to be very clear, and you have to ask questions. You have to figure out, okay, who is the decision maker? Is it the athletic trainer? Is it the speed and agility trainer who's putting other people together? Is it the strength and conditioning coach of a place, right? Who is the gatekeeper, quote unquote? And ask them what they need you for, because a lot of us chiropractors do come to the table with obviously the manipulation. And then there also could be something like, I'm certified in active release technique. They could want me for ART. And there's a lot of chiropractors that are really strong with rehab. And you got to see where you're coming in at it. And a lot of times they just want you for the manipulation, the adjustment. That's great. If that's what it is, that's your role. There's a lot of team NFL chiropractors are wanted for their active release technique. And so you have to play your role and find out who the decision maker is. And sometimes you have to bite your tongue, and sometimes you have to play nice. But the mistake I've seen many chiropractors make is they come in like a bull in a china shop and want to be everything to everybody and start making recommendations on, rehab stuff or strength and conditioning stuff. And they have not put themselves in a position yet to be there. And then there's unique situations. Like there's a chiropractor, Troy Van Biesen out of Dallas. He is kind of like the head honcho of the Dallas Stars now on the performance side. He's gotten to that level over some decades, and he probably is the decision maker there. But do not assume, as the chiropractor, when you're being brought onto a team of providers, that you are the decision maker. Try to ask very good questions and play your roles.
I think some of that probably stems from just our background and training in school. We were taught to do everything. You do your own exam, you do your own x-rays, you do your own therapy. We're kind of became in our minds, I guess, a one-stop shop. And it's interesting when you step into an environment like that, or even like at the spine center, or starting to work with other professionals, checking yourself and say, well, I am now part of a team. And you wouldn't expect a brand new player to the NFL to come in and say, well, I want to be the quarterback, I want to be the running back, I want to be the linebacker. You gotta play where your strengths are and be okay with that, I would think. And I'm sure sometimes that takes a little checking of the ego at the door. And then over time, if you feel like you can add other things and improve, I think you don't get to come in right out of the gate and do all of that, but you earn the right to do that. Almost like when you hire an associate a brand new associate out of school and they want to come in and change the world in your office. And you say, wait a minute, dude, people have bought me and my brand for 20 some odd years. How about learn what we're doing first? And then maybe in a year, let's talk about what you want to do different. So a little bit different mindset, and got to be willing to, I guess, play well with others.
You do. And I think just to put a cap on it is that, sometimes as a chiropractor, they go in and they have a different philosophical approach. Or, frankly, you may actually know something really well that someone else, another one of the providers in that team gives it a recommendation. You're like, well, that's not really right. And then you just speak your mind on it, and now you're throwing people under the bus. And so you can't throw people under the bus. Sometimes you have to bite your tongue. It's not easy.
You have to be a team player if you're going to work with teams, right? So I know you were also involved with the PGA and the Champions Tour. What role do you really see? I mean, clearly golf has been around forever and will be. It's the one game you can't win. I mean, you just get a better score. I think that's what keeps everybody coming back. Typically in that environment, you're not I would assume, part of a team, or were you just seeing them for performance enhancement, injuries? If a doc wants to get involved with that type of care, probably a little easier hill to climb than getting into the NFL level. How would you recommend a doc go about approaching maybe the golf pro at the local club, or getting involved with tournaments?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm certified in Titleist Performance Institute, TPI. Dr. Greg Rose, who's a chiropractor who has actually transcended the profession. A few weeks ago, I had him on my podcast, and it was great to hear how he positioned himself as an expert back in the late 90s, early 2000s, to the point where he built up such a reputation that Titleist came to him and a golf teaching pro to form the Titleist Performance Institute out in Oceanside, California. Now it's just a massive entity. And so I was certified and connected with them for many years. And then I just kept on working in my community, getting the message out there, meeting with teaching pros, setting up injury prevention talks with golf pros and country clubs. There was a little Tea Times magazine. It was like a paper journal that would go to all the local South Florida golf course. I contacted them, wrote articles for them. I just did a lot of stuff with it. But then ultimately my connections with other TPI providers, and one was Jeff Banasak, who was actually a physical therapist. He needed help at certain events. So he brought me to 6 different events over a couple year period of time. And it was great. The hard part about it is when you travel on a tour with a golfer, you actually have to go like Tuesday all the way to Sunday. And I had recently opened up my own practice. I didn't have an associate. And I was like, I'm going to do a handful of these. I got paid to do it, but it was paid well. But as my practice was growing, I was losing money doing it. And I was like, I'm going to do it for a little bit, get the experience, build up a little reputation, do all that. And then I'm going to have, if I can't figure this out, I'm going to have to bow out of it. And so I did in 2012, but it was a great experience.
Yep, that's awesome. Well, everyone, if you will, hang tight. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Welcome back, everybody, to our podcast with Dr. Kevin Christie. We're going to continue our conversation here. Let's kind of back up a little bit to the chiropractic marketing and some of the other things that you're involved in. I've heard it said everything we do is marketing, from, literally how we answer the phone, the way we communicate internally in our office, to our public-facing marketing. What aspects of marketing do you help doctors focus on?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. One of the things I realized, it was back in 2015 into 2016. And I started a closed Facebook group. It's called Modern Chiropractic Marketing. And I realized that there was a lot of ethical, evidence-based chiropractors. When they thought of marketing, it was like a dirty word. They didn't want to do any of the old kind of cheesy marketing that profession has done, or even other businesses. And they just repelled against marketing at all because they thought it was bad. And I had discovered something called content marketing from the Content Marketing Institute. They're out of Cleveland, Ohio. And I was like, wow, this is great, content marketing. And so that's the type of content that we try to teach chiropractors how to do. And I even wrote a book on that called Doing It Right, Modern Chiropractic Marketing, that I was fortunate enough to have Parker University publish. And that was really the kind of the roadmap of what it looks like to do content marketing for your practice. And it's a form of invisible marketing where you're compelling the right people and you're repelling the wrong people in your practice, and ultimately using education-based content to position yourself as the expert in your community, right? And then taking certain platforms as vehicles to get it out there. Like when you probably open up your first practice, Doc, it probably was yellow pages, newspaper ads, radio, and then you had to get boots on the ground, right? Yeah. And the vehicles back then to get content out was very tricky. Now it's very ubiquitous, which is great. It lends itself to a little bit of a struggle because there's a lot of content out there. So if I were to rewind to 2015, if you were just getting content out there, you were making good progress because not many people were doing it, but you had these vehicles to get it out there. Now, 2024, kind of getting close to 2025, there's so much content out there that you have to do it consistently, and you have to do it. You have to have a good message. Your market message match has to be there, and you have to. You really just have to do it consistently with different formats, and it really will position you well in your community.
Yeah. Recently, as part of running our company, ChiroHealth, certainly marketing has changed, and we've seen a big change in just even how doctors respond to marketing that we used to do, which would probably be more content marketing, a lot of articles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we attended an event in Las Vegas called LeadCon, generating leads for businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean the people from Google and Yahoo and Amazon. Unbelievable heavy hitters in the marketing industry were there, and man, what an eye opener it was. And probably one of the major takeaways was they were talking about how consumers come to business now, and the reality is because there is so much information available, internet, TikTok, wherever you get your information, they were making the point that by the time someone reaches out to you or calls you, they have already made up their mind because they've consumed enough information about you that they have made the decision you're the guy or you're the gal. And their point was, don't screw it up. Don't have someone call your clinic and have a bad experience with whoever might be answering the phone, or don't have financial policies that make it near impossible for patients to get the care they need, or don't have, if you've got somebody who comes in and really all they're really interested is in relief, like we're about to be here in Mississippi, we're a big deer hunting community, so everybody's going to come in to see the chiropractor a week before deer season, even though it's bothered them for the entire year. But, you got to be okay with giving people what they want. And I will tell you, we had a local chiro, great friend of mine, who was my best referral source because he insisted on day one that a patient sign up for, and I'm not, however he practices, that's his business, but sign up for a year of care and then agreed to monthly maintenance care for another year. And it turned people off. They weren't ready for that. He hadn't earned that right yet to be able to make that recommendation or that ask. So, sometimes we if we're doing a good job in getting people to call, then make sure that you're doing the things, because the call is just the call. And like I said, everything is marketing. So looking at every aspect of your practice and make sure that it's consumer and patient friendly, not just good for the doctor, but literally change the focus and look and see what are consumers wanting, what are they expecting, and be willing to, deliver that. Unless you're such an elite practitioner that, you got people lined up around the block, and, an endless supply of new patients.
Yeah, what you just described is a product market fit, and you can market your services all you want, but then when they come in, if the product doesn't fit what you were talking about or what their expectation is or what the overall desire of the consumer is, you're going to have a problem. And so what you end up seeing in those particular practices to overcome that product market mismatch is they have to highly sell, like it becomes a big time sales job. Because again, what you just described by trying to sell a year package on visit one is like trying to get someone to marry you on date one, right? That's a hard sell you're going to have to do.
We call
Um,
that sex on the first date.
yeah, it is. And now, some chiropractors can get away with it, right? Just like I'm sure if, if Tom Brady asked a woman to marry him on date one, she probably would say yes, right? He's, he's got, he's got a little bit of different, skill set than maybe I do, right? And,
Yeah.
but yeah, so the product market mismatch is something that we see a lot. And then a second thing to your point is that if we kind of bring this full circle and we go back 30 years ago in the 80s, 90s, the Mercedes 80s, 90s, it was so easy that you didn't like healthcare didn't have to provide a great patient experience ultimately.
Mhm.
Now, and this is what's kind of gotten us at MCM here, we started out with just marketing for chiropractors, but now we really do kind of all things practice growth for chiropractors because we started to see it's like I could teach this chiropractor marketing, but if that patient calls and it's a front desk person that's ornery and they walk into the office and it's a bad experience, like the marketing's not going to work. So we got to
Exactly.
have a good product. And so the product as a chiropractor obviously is multifaceted, but one of the big things is what is that patient experience like? Like, is it a very nice, engaging front desk person on the phone? And then when they come in, is it a more modern office and it doesn't look like it's from the 1980s? Are you communicating with that patient effectively outside of that? Like, are they getting text message reminders for their appointment? Can they schedule online? Right? There's all these things that people are
Mhm.
expecting as a consumer now in 2024. And it's remarkable. If your practice is, a lot of people think an antiquated practice would be like paper notes and, old chiropractic tables from the 1990s and all that. It's not the case now. An antiquated practice is even if you're stuck in like 2015,
Still got a fax machine.
yeah, where, you just, your website hasn't been updated in 10 years and, your EHR system is non-existent or it's not good, right? There's a lot of things that chiropractors can do to modernize their practice to help with that patient experience and then ultimately a great product.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned the healthcare consumers, and I'll go back to an example that we had. Um, my daughter had some orthopedic injuries when she was young, and it was not uncommon. Um, she had a fractured femur, pelvis, and the humerus from a auto actually got run over. And it was unbelievable. If we had an appointment with one of the orthopedics, number one, it might be a month and a half down the road. Good thing there's nothing wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
But then when you went, I am not kidding. You were in for a 2 to 3 hour wait, even if you were the 8 o'clock patient. It's like, how the hell do you get behind on an 8 o'clock, a special skill set?
Yeah.
And what was interesting, because she required care over a number of years, and then it was probably 10 years before we went back. And when I went back, saw the same doc, we were in a room in less than 5 minutes. We were seen by the doctor in less than 10 minutes. And I happened, got to know the guy over the years. And I said, what changed? I said, the experience. I mean, I used to have to block a day out of my practice to come see you guys. And now I'm in 10 minutes. He said, Ray, you won't believe it. We hired someone from the fast food industry who does time motion studies, and it completely changed our practice. And I mean, they always had a thriving practice, but everybody was so pissed off at them by the
Yeah.
time they got in to see them. And you talk about bringing somebody to a bad experience. And it was just really interesting to see how enough people complained about something, and it made even a group of orthopedic surgeons say, hey, there's got to be a better way. And interestingly, he said, a lot of my colleagues really didn't like this. They didn't like being on time. They didn't like having to, stay on a schedule. And he said, but the reality is, now that we've been doing this for about a year, nobody would ever go back. So, I think it's good that you kind of expanded, or it's excellent that you expand the role of marketing, because the last thing you want to do is spend a bunch of time, effort, and energy marketing, and then bring people to a horrible experience. And unfortunately, that happens. So what do you see as the most common thing that not your guys or gals, because they're doing it right, but what do you see? What do you see a lot of the profession doing wrong when it
Yeah,
comes
for
to their
sure.
marketing?
What they're doing wrong when it comes to the marketing is a lot of them aren't doing anything. But one of the other issues is they, we'll call it random acts of content. Like they'll just do some kind of things here and there. There's no strategy.
Throw something on the fire.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a quick tactic or a quick campaign. Hopefully, they'll be low on new patients and office visits, so they'll do something so it gets them like a little sugar high, but there's no consistency around it. So then they don't think it didn't work. We got some new patient, but it didn't work. So that's definitely a big problem. And then there's
Sporadic
kind of
marketing.
a few, sporadic marketing for sure. That's happening a lot. I think video is one of the best things a chiropractor can do, and there's some that just refuse to do that or are scared to do it. But they had the confidence to go to chiropractic school and spend 4 years and a lot of money to do that. If they put the effort into it, they would gain the confidence to get on video. And we're not asking them to be, Brad Pitt. We just need them to get on video and be a leading educator in their community, and they'll see results.
Yeah, it's definitely positioning, great content, positioning, putting yourself out there. I did a talk for the guys at Chiro Up several months back, and part of the focus was on, one of the best ways to build and grow your practice is to learn to say yes, show up, be willing to. My daughter, actually, first time I ever spoke before 1,000 people at one time. My daughter was with me on the trip. And I was nervous. I mean, it's like 1,000 people in the audience. Never had one that large before. And I made a point of telling my daughter, Reagan, you're seeing your daddy uncomfortable at the moment.
Yeah.
And bless her heart, the next week she gave me a pen that says life begins at the end of your comfort zone.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I would encourage doctors, you just sometimes got to show up and say yes and be willing to put yourself out there, fail a little bit. I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'll tell you one thing, even if you're really bad at first, you keep doing it, you're going to get better at it.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt. So I want to talk to you a little bit about dealing with the public. And even though you've got content marketing, content can be a 10-second TikTok. It could be a little intro video that takes them to something longer. And as I said, we as a company, and I know several company owners in our space and other spaces that for whatever reason, post-COVID, it is more difficult to get people to engage and to take next steps. As a matter of fact, in one of our marketing meetings, I coined the term, we're dealing with TikTok docs.
Yeah.
Meaning they give us, 5 seconds. We've got a message you need to listen to a little bit longer. And the challenge is, how do you even get them to the point that they're willing to take a next step? And so the same thing can apply to our patients that we're trying to reach. We've got TikTok patients whose attention span is so short. What have you found to be effective to get the hook or to get people to take a next step, whether it's to pick up the phone, go to your website? Basically what we're talking about is, how are you getting people to take a call to action when you've got such a limited time frame? It's a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And there's also the theory that people need to see things, like 7 times before they're going to take action. There's going to be some people that digest certain media types better than others. And it's hard as a practicing chiropractor to be on Facebook and Instagram, doing Instagram posts and reels versus TikTok, email, like the list goes on, right? But I think, just being consistent over time, you're going to build up the skill set to have like a total web presence, which is going to help. But from a compelling messaging standpoint, one of the best trainings out there, concepts out there is from Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand, which is a great book. Really put him on the map big time. And it talks about telling a story, and in every story, the messaging is going to be compelling for them. And what the mistake a lot of chiropractors make is they make themselves the hero, right? So like, I'm, Dr. Kevin Christie, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Or they make the technique, chiropractic or ART or whatever, the hero. You really got to make the patient the hero. And then, so that's step one. And then step two is the hero or the character in the story, which is that potential patient. They have a problem, right? And that problem would bring could be three things: external, internal, philosophical conflicts, which Donald Miller talks about. And the external conflict, as it pertains to chiropractic, would say be headaches, right? They have headaches. The internal conflict is, what is that headache doing to them, right? Maybe they just cannot concentrate at work anymore, and they're just falling behind at work, and they're worried that it's impacting their performance. They're worried they could get laid off. Like, it gets deep rooted. They know they're not performing at a good level. And then the philosophical problem is okay, they know they have to see someone for this headache. Who are they going to see, right? They could see a physical therapist, massage therapist, an acupuncturist, an orthopedist, a primary care doctor, a chiropractor. And if they made that decision to see a chiropractor, why are they going to choose you? Okay. And you want them to choose chiropractic, and you want them to choose you. And you, as the chiropractor, needs to show them, which is step 4, which is a plan. Okay, or step 3 is a plan. You really got to have that. You're going to be the guide for them. That's going to show them a plan, right? And then they're going to take action on that, and that's going to lead to success. So if you're shooting a video, you got to say, instead of saying, "Hey, I'm Dr. Kevin Christie, Boca Raton chiropractor, and I'm certified in active release technique," and you're kind of making it, they're turning off. Like, you got to hook them quick. You got to hook them quick. So instead, it would look like, are you dealing with headaches, and it's, impacting your quality of life and even at work, and you don't want to take pills, drugs, or have any surgery? Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Christie. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 things you can do for your headaches that's going to get rid of them and get you back to performing at your highest level. Boom. That's a quick little hook that if anybody with headaches will relate. It's like, okay, I'm going to watch this to see what they're going to do. And then you go into the meat of your content, the video, right?
Right.
And then at the end, you could have your call to action. It's like, hey, if you want to get rid of your headaches without pills, drugs, and surgery, call our office at blah, 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 right? And you're trying to get a very clear message that matches up with a very clear audience. And that's a great way of doing it, whether it's video, writing, blog post, whatever it may be.
It sounds like a formula.
Yeah, it's again, Donald Miller, building a story brand is really good.
Yep, I'll add that one to my list. So let's pivot a little bit. One of the things that we briefly discussed was the stages of chiropractic practice, and for the doctors. And I think of it in terms of, I'm 68, soon to be 69, and so I'm kind of in my 4th quarter. But we've got docs. Just to keep it simple, let's keep it in the space of 3. We've got the young doctors that are coming out of school, maybe been in practice, 1 to 5 years. You got those that maybe been in it 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and then you got guys that are looking for some kind of strategy or exit strategy that isn't a pine box, which unfortunately is the exit strategy for too many docs. What do you see, or what do you feel are the biggest concerns for chiropractors in that first group, the 1 to 5 years? Help them shave off some time and paying stupid tax.
Yeah, for sure. And they definitely have a few things going
against them.
I say stupid
in a loving way. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. But
exactly.
I got lots of receipts.
Yeah, when we start out young, it's that's just part of it, right? And I think there's a few things they're facing, other than the fact, okay, yeah, there's inflation, all that's bothering everybody. But the young DC, they're suffering from a few things. One is, I think, there's not enough patience in developing mastery with their hands. And so they're getting frustrated with that. Some of them, unfortunately, went through COVID in school and didn't get enough work with their hands. And so they're coming out, they're not confident with their hands, and they're trying to find other things to supplement that. The other thing that they're dealing with is they think they're in a time-based economy with patients and not a results-based economy. Too many of them are thinking they need to spend 30 to 60 minutes with a patient doing everything under the sun every visit. Like, they're throwing the kitchen sink at them, visit 1, visit 2, visit 3. And so they're falling into that trap of time, which is, if I asked 1,000 people in the community, would you rather spend an hour with your chiropractor or 30 minutes with your chiropractor, or would you rather spend 10 to 15, 20 minutes and get the same results? People want results in time efficiency. And then a lot of the young chiropractors think there has to be at least 30 to 60 minutes spent to get results. which is not the case. But if they put in their due diligence to get a level of mastery with their hands and with their clinical efficiency and evaluations, they'll be able to get the results in a timely manner. So they're running into that time problem, which then leads to the third thing that they're running into that I'm seeing. And it goes back to what we were saying, is that the insurance model is so challenging now. A lot of them are opting to be out of network with insurances and charge cash rates, but they're spending so much time with, like, let's just even say they're spending 20 minutes with a patient, but they're only charging $65. If I could only see 3 people or 2 people an hour, but for this example, let's say I could see 3 people an hour at $65, that's about 190 whatever dollars an hour. That is not enough to build a practice and a team. It sounds good. Like if you made $190 an hour as an hourly pay and you were just a W-2 employee and you made $100, that's good. But when you're trying to run a business with overheads, Ray, like it takes more money. You need to be able to bring in at least probably $300 an hour, if not more than that in many places, to be able to afford rent and overhead and team members and things like that. And so that young crowd is falling into this trap of what they're trying to offer from a time-based service definitely doesn't fit the insurance model. So then they're trying to go a cash model with it, and they're running up to problems there. And then so one of the solutions that's been attempted with them, or that is being attempted, is to charge, $300-$400 for that session, right? I'll spend an hour with you, but it's going to be $300-$400. And now you have going back to our product market mismatch. There's not a lot of people in the community are looking to spend an hour with the chiropractor and pay $400 for that. And to overcome that, you have to give a very hard, strong sales job to get that to happen. And so we're seeing that in the evidence-based world quite a bit, unfortunately.
A couple of things you mentioned, and again, there's so many different ways of practicing it, and there's not just one way, but you got to find, certainly what works for you. And one of the things, since we are also involved in kind of the financial side of their house, and I will tell you, I can't tell you how many of our calls from doctors really turn into a therapy session about their value.
Yeah.
And them undervaluing their services. And there's a saying that if you're going to really have a hard time building a high level of success or financial security, if you're always trading your time for money.
Yeah.
Because you've only got so much of it. There's only so many, like you said, only so many people that are willing to pay a high enough rate, to make that feasible.
Yeah. And it goes back to my Tom Brady example of there are going to be some chiropractors that can command $300, $400, $500 an hour from one patient, right? Like one patient paying them that.
Sure.
And I've had some of them on my podcast before, but they kind of are like the Tom Brady of the chiropractic. Like they've built a huge reputation, or they're very just good communicators and good at sales naturally. Like there's certain aspects of them that they have. It's not the norm. It's completely the outlier. And then you have to be in an affluent area typically. So there's just a lot of things that go against that ability to pull that off at scale.
Yep. One of the other things that you mentioned was the kids coming, or young adults coming out of chiropractic college. And we offer a scholarship. So for any of you who are students, be sure and apply for that. It's a Foxworth Family Scholarship in honor of my parents. $25,000. 10,000 to the college, 10,000 to the students' tuition, and 5,000 for what we call beer and pizza money. So y'all be sure and apply for that. But some of the conversations that we have with them, they are coming out of an artificial environment in college, and they're going into business. And I wrote an article years ago called "Cash is King, but Don't Forget About the Queen." And the whole point of the article was, while we love the idea of a cash-based practice, and I mean, I know guys that are killing it doing that, and that's awesome. But again, it takes a certain skill set to do that. And if you got it, great. If you can teach someone to do it, great. But we have to think kind of like we have to have the mindset or be aware of the mindset of the consumers. And I asked them a real simple question. I said, you want to run a cash practice? That's great. You got about $250,000 in debt. The going rate for an adjustment is this amount. This is amount. Oh my gosh, I can't see that many people. And it becomes a math problem, really.
Yeah.
And, then the other part that they don't realize is that there have been studies done on this, that people will leave a doctor they like for a new doctor if the copay is like $7 different. And so people, unfortunately, do make some decisions based on money. Certainly distinguish yourself where you can charge what you feel like you need to and make a good living. But people that are paying thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a year for health insurance, and it happens to cover, I don't care if it's 6 visits, 10 visits, 12 visits, guess what they want to do? They want to be able to use their insurance. And we have done surveys to the public, and something like 70 some odd percent of the people would not even consider going to an out-of-network provider or someone who doesn't file their insurance. That doesn't mean cash practice is bad, but you need to be aware of that. And then you also got to understand, ask yourself this. I pay a lot for auto insurance. If I wreck my car, do I want to go to a shop that only accepts cash, or do I want to take it where someone's going to fix my car and do it right and be paid by the insurance company? It's just human, kind of human nature.
Yep.
So if that is a direction you want to go to, you got to make sure you're rock solid in your mindset and your confrontation skills, being able to address the money issue with people. Got to be aware of how people are thinking, and because we only see, depending on whose numbers you look at, 10 to 15% of the population, all of a sudden your potential patients has really gotten narrow, because if only 15 to 20% of the people are willing to pay cash for services when they have coverage, your pool just got a lot more narrow. And those that could afford to pay, $200, $300, $400 for a visit, your market just got more narrow. So, at some point it does kind of become a numbers game. Is it a viable option? And it absolutely is for some. And like I said, some are crushing it, but it is not for the faint of heart. I see more people that are successful at it that have built up a very good practice and then made a conscious decision and made a transition. The horror stories that we hear from someone who gets pissed off at Aetna, Cigna, and Blue Cross on Friday and says, come Monday, we're not taking insurance anymore. Boy, are you in for a world of trauma. Not only in the business, but probably at home.
Yeah, definitely. And so I transitioned my insurance, exiting insurance over 2 years, and I built up a reputation. And I'm not ignorant to the fact that a lot of these young DCs, they can't get on insurances because the panels are closed. So I do get that. Or they just decided they want to go cash. And if that's the case, great. But like you said, know your market. And then you're going to need to really make sure you're doing marketing consistently. So I think the cash practice has to do more marketing consistently, get out in the community, a lot of community outreach to do that. And then you have to have a unique skill set of care. You can't be average clinically to really be a cash practice and do well and pay yourself a professional wage.
Yep. So we talked about the younger people coming out of school now, and let's pivot a little bit to the folks that might have been in practice 10 to 15 years. What concerns do you have for them, and what do they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, we work a lot with this crowd, and they reach out to us, and typically what's happened is the practice they have now is not meeting the vision they had when they opened it 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? And they're frustrated. They're 40, 45 years old. They don't have the team members they thought they would be able to afford. They don't have the professional income they thought they'd have. They're starting to get a little bit concerned about retirement funding. They're not that you should be maxed out in retirement at age 40, but you should start to feel like, okay, yeah, I'm on a good trajectory to get there. And so they're seeing those things, and the practice isn't serving them like they thought it would. And they may have built it, not the most efficient way as far as patient flow and their marketing. They haven't done the marketing. and they're 40 and they're like, well, I don't want to do TikTok, like they're seeing some of these younger DCs come in doing all these things, and they're like, how do I have marketing? And part of what's happening, I categorize this crowd as busy and broke. They're busy with patients, they're busy with life, they have kids, they got spouses, but they're not financially, they don't have cash flow confidence and things like that. And so we work with them to try to kind of configure the practice in a sense. And again, in an ethical way, we never put anybody in a box. You got to do it this way. It's a framework. We try to educate them on how this can be done. And it's always cool to see that doc, because they have a built-in advantage. Typically, they've got a patient base, they've got a practice that has patients coming in. We just got to tweak a handful of things and they can start to see growth quite a bit quicker, which is nice.
There's a lot of talk now about burnout in physicians and chiropractors. I just saw an article published about specifically in the chiropractic space. And I just read an article out of Medical Economics that something like 50% of the medical students coming out of college today, by the time they graduate, have almost decided they don't want to practice, or they want to go into some other field adjacent to direct patient care. And then they attribute it a lot to the burnout that occurs. And I think for a lot of people, especially in that mid category, burnout usually happens when you don't feel like you're being rewarded for your efforts. Because if you always feel like you're being rewarded for your efforts and things are getting better, you're good. But when you feel like you're just busting your hump to, I mean, let's face it, nobody went to school and went into practice just to pay bills.
Yeah.
There's got to be something left for some life enjoyment to make sure you're doing it along the way. So what are you seeing for the guys, as I said, might be in their fourth quarter?
Yeah. I think the ones that are looking at an exit strategy over the next few years to 10 years, something that we're seeing, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, is their practice has become antiquated and they're falling behind. I've even had some state associations have me kind of consult with their chiropractors on their seasoned veterans of, okay, how do we compete in this marketplace with all the things that have changed? Let's say they've been practicing for 30 years. I mean, think about the difference now versus 30 years ago. It is drastic. And so their practice isn't modernized. And again, whether it's new paint on the walls and getting rid of the shag carpeting, or it's, having some of the modern technology in practice, like a laser, nice tables and things like that, all the way up to, is your Google business profile updated? Is your website fresh? Do you have online scheduling? Are you using reviews to help with your marketing? Do you have text message campaign? Like, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. Are you emailing your patients weekly with content? And that can get overwhelming for them. And so we can help these seasoned DCs. We can come in and help modernize, kind of almost like a general contractor. It's like, okay, look, we're going to do a complete, audit of this and what you could do over the next 6 to 12 months to modernize your practice, because ultimately that will help them sell their practice. It'll help them be more profitable and provide a great patient experience like we did earlier while they do own it. But then if they do go to sell it, they have something that's sellable and they'll get a proper pricing for it. It's kind of like selling your home. It's like you got to get rid of the shag carpeting in your house before you sell it as well. Same thing with your practice.
Yeah, and having been at this quite a while myself, almost 40 years now, I've seen a number of colleagues that, I'll get that call, hey, Ray, I need to sell my practice. And they're selling it at the wrong time. They haven't invested in it in quite some time. They haven't built it up. I mean, if you look at other business models out there, the most profitable businesses are the ones that sell when they're at their peak.
Yes.
Not when they're down in the valley. And by the time, you get to that point and decide, geez, I need to sell this, and you think it's worth, $500,000 or $1 million, but you got the shag carpet, you're probably not going to get that. So, I think that's a good takeaway that people need to start thinking about. Certainly you have the practice, but the practice is a product. And if you were going to sell that, the timing of it is absolutely everything. And I think, unfortunately, too many wait till close. They wait too long before they get the practice ready and change out the shaft. That's a good one. So I got some just for fun questions.
Yep.
Who's your hero and why?
Oh, yeah. General MacArthur, and it's because my grandfather was
That's the first time I've had someone say that.
He's on my wall right over here. You can see him. I know it sounds random, but my grandfather was a flamethrower in the Pacific for 4 years and fought underneath him. And I read his 800-page bio, and I know he had some flaws as a general here and there, but it was pretty impressive the life he lived and then what he did do in obviously a pretty monumental war.
Yep. What talent do you have that most people don't know about?
Ping pong.
No kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not world class or anything, but I usually win.
Well, I tell people when I left high school early because I had enough credits, and I went to Holmes Junior College. And, most people earn a GPA when they go to school. I actually owed them some points, but I was really, really good at ping pong and foosball.
There you go.
I still have a foosball table to this day.
That's great.
That's good. So, Kevin, if people want to reach out to you, find out more about what you can do and how you can help, what's the best way to get in contact with you, friend?
Yeah, they can go to modernchiropracticmarketing.com. We also have a podcast, Modern Chiropractic Mastery. And one of the things we're doing in November of 2024, not to date too much, but we have we're trying to get a lot of chiropractors to get to the $30,000 per month revenue. I know it doesn't sound like a lot for some, but I feel like there's a ton of chiropractors out there that are not getting to that number. And I feel like that's a great baseline number to build a great team, pay yourself a professional wage, and then be able to reinvest in your business to get even better and have a great, successful practice. So you could check that out. And we got that launching in December.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. It's good to get to know you a little bit better. And thanks to everyone for listening to the ChiroSphere podcast. Please subscribe and share the podcast with your friends, and let us know who you'd like to hear from in the future, what topics you'd like us to cover, and we'll do our best to deliver. If you want to learn more about ChiroHealth USA and how we can help you build a compliant, profitable discount strategy that will absolutely grow your practice, your income, and profitability, call us at 888-719-9990 or visit our website at chusa.com. That's how you spell CHUSA, to find out why ChiroHealth USA is the network that works for chiropractic in you. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you.